think I talked to him on the phone. It was a art festival. Not big, like 500 people or something. Oh, that's what I asked, but he said they like space because they had big pieces of art. Yeah. So it was too small for them. Hmm? She may. So then we don't have to read that. Well, let's see if they can take it up. So you just have one so far? Who was that? Okay. Okay, I think we're ready.
Going to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the 29 Palms Planning Commission to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Cruchet,
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Here.
Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Please let the record reflect that Vice Chair Dixon and Chair Pahana have excused absences.
These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website, www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. Public comments. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments will be directed to the Chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There's a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you have not already done so, please fill out name and address slips and give them to the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. I have no request for general comments. Commissioner comments and reports of meetings attended. Jim?
I had no attended meetings in the last week. Thank you.
You did go to the academy training though, right?
Did go to the academy training. I'm sorry. I did, I didn't know if, and that was very informative. And I appreciate the opportunity for the city sending me there.
Max?
I also went to the statewide Planning Commissioners Academy. It was a good time. Lots of good information was handed out, and we attended all the sessions. It was a good time. Over the weekend, I went to the Hilltoppers race. That was quite exciting. It was good to see a lot of people out there and enjoying it.
I did not attend any meetings, nor did I attend the Planning Commissioner Academy. Consent calendar, we have none. Therefore, we have no items removed for the consent calendar for discussion. We'll move into our public hearings. Amendments to the Development Code, Chapter 19.41, Vacation Home Rental. And I will turn this over to our Planning Director, Mr. Travis Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This request is to review and approve amendments to Chapter 19.41, Vacation Home Rental of the Development Code. Applicant in this instance is the City of 29 Palms. A little bit of background about this code amendment. In 2021, the City Council established an ad hoc committee to review the existing regulations governing vacation home rentals. This committee met 9 times over 5 months from September through January. 2 of the ad hoc members are here tonight. On March 1st, 2022, committee reviewed the recommendations at a study session. I think it was an hour and a half long, and voted on them with some modifications. Once those were codified into the development code, it was sent to the attorney who reviewed the changes. They had no problem with what was proposed, but did say that at some point in the code we need to include a hardship clause for fines. This is a part of the state law. Doesn't necessarily belong in vacation home rentals because it applies to fines throughout that the city would administer. But they did make that point. So in your packet, we presented the original ordinance. We presented the ordinance and track changes, and also the ordinance as it would look with the accepted changes. So I'll start with the major changes proposed. First of all, the overall cap on the number of vacation home rental licenses. 12% is where the committee ended up. 12% of 5,797 detached single-family houses per the 2020 census is 695 houses. Currently, we are at 240 permits issued and 129 pending. With 50 closed, so we're about 6.4% currently. Another major change that was proposed is increase in fines, actually doubling for disturbance and safety violations. First fine, penalty should be $500 within a 12-month period. Then it goes up to $1,000 for the second and $2,000 for the third, all within a 12-month period. There's actually a separate set of fines for operating without a license. The first violation would be a warning to the owner, but the second violation, the penalty would be $2,500, and the third violation would be $5,000, followed by a $5,000 per day fine if the rental operations do not cease. Procedural and minor nuisance violations have the same standard code enforcement fines as you'll find in the rest of the ordinance. Another major change is the community development director has the authority to be given to suspend a vacation home rental license based upon the severity of the violations. The owner can appeal this decision to the planning commission at a public hearing. Some of the other changes proposed include language concerning signage on vacation home rental property that was deleted as it was seen as duplicative of the requirements of our sign code. The language on animals was also deleted as those regulations are governed by Section 19102, Animal Keeping of the Development Code. The language concerning parking of vehicles on site was modified to specify overnight parking. A new requirement was added to require that a vacation home rental is to be rented for at least 1 day in a year in order for the license to remain active. Other changes include a new requirement was added to require a noise mitigation plan. We included that definition in there. A new requirement was added to require each owner or agent attend the class, either live or virtual, on how to be a responsible vacation home rental host. A new requirement was added to perform safety and compliance inspection of the house every 3 years. And a clarification was made to limit the number of vehicles parking on site to the on-site parking spaces available. Other changes include definitions were added to define procedural and nuisance violation, disturbance and safety violations, and a noise mitigation plan. The terms maintain residential character were strengthened since it could not be objectively defined. The term tenant was changed to guest. The term permit was changed to license. This gets us more in line with state law. And staff did add a requirement to provide a floor plan with the rooms labeled. We usually get a floor plan for the evacuation route, but we wanted up front just to check the number of bedrooms to make sure that they're all permitted properly. This project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15305, minor alterations in land use. So the staff recommendation is to approve the resolution recommending adoption of amendments to chapter 1941, vacation home rental of the development code by city council, and find the project category exempt from CEQA. Whatever your recommendation is, this would still go to the city council for consideration. And that's our staff report. As I mentioned, all the different versions of the code are included in your packet. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you would have.
Does anybody have questions, staff?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. I'll open up the public hearing. At this time, I have 2 requests to speak. The first is Alan Dietz. Am I saying that correct? Please come up to the podium.
Hi. Just wanted to say,
Is the microphone working?
is the microphone on? Or maybe unless, hello? I guess not.
There's no button.
Button on the back. Oh, okay. I just wasn't speaking loud enough. I just wanted to say my support for the cap in actual vacation home rentals in the city of 29 Palms. I don't know if you remember, but last year I, in a very short amount of time, collected hundreds of signatures for people that were in favor of having a cap or a healthy limit on vacation rentals. So I just wanted to at least make that comment in support of the cap that you are proposing for vacation rentals in the city limit. That's all.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next, I have Susan Peplow.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. In regards to the ordinance, great job. I'm really excited to see the changes that you guys have worked so hard on to come to where we're at now. I have 2 thoughts on a few things. One, when I was reading the draft, it talked about inactivity. And as you know, like, we have a pretty unique town as far as like what our needs might be for, vacation stay, multi-month, and then long-term needs. And I was, for your consideration, I was thinking, 12 months to have it drop off your license theoretically might have an unintended byproduct of people not extending year leases. If they think that their license is going to drop off and you have to go through the whole permit process again to re-permit because now it's no longer valid. So although I think the intent may have been to keep people from perhaps obtaining permits to hold them and then not utilize them, I think that that's really smart. But the 12 months thing seemed a little narrow for the dynamics of our particular community. We've got Park Service employees, contractors, there's all sorts of people that could potentially be needing a place for a year. So maybe planned non-operation with maybe a fee associated with it, or maybe extend it out 18 months, 24 months or something, where you're still achieving perhaps the goal of people not holding the permit and not utilizing it, but not penalizing those who are really trying to take care of the overall needs of the community. And then the other thought I was having was in regards to the 1-night minimum, which we're all aware and do the 2-night minimum currently. And, so many people come through 29 Palms as a pit stop. I'm happy with a 2-night minimum myself, but I realize, my friends stop by on their way to Tucson. People go to the Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, up north. So by requiring a 2-night minimum, I was just thinking maybe reconsider the 1 night, because right now they either have to stay in a hotel, and my daughter sleep trains her kids, like they have to be like in a room, not in a shared hotel room, for example. So people may not be doing the pit stop in 29 Palms and seeing our murals and our restaurants and our art galleries. They're going to potentially push on through to Yucca or Joshua Tree, or maybe not even in the Morongo Basin at all. So maybe leave it to the host to decide whether or not they would do a 1 or a 2 night minimum. But I think limiting the travelers to not have that choice is something that maybe you should, it would be nice if there was further discussion on that. And that was it. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Please, yeah. Come on up and turn in your request to speak, or fill one out. Ma'am, you'll find the blank forms out in the hallway.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing my comment today. I want to say great job to all of you on coming to a conclusion on the recommendations for the short-term rental ordinance. I just want to say that Desert Beacon strongly, agrees with what's being proposed. However, I do have a couple of comments. We do feel that short-term rentals should be managed by local owners or local property management companies so that concerns can be addressed right away and that people can be on site right away to address those concerns. I know that Yucca Valley has a 30-minute phone call. You have 15 minutes to call and 30 minutes to be in person. San Bernardino County requires that you have to make that call within 30 minutes and you have to be in person within 60 minutes. So those are some comments that I wanted to add. Again, I greatly appreciate your leadership and thank you again for hearing my comment.
Ma'am, you can come in and speak and complete that after you're finished.
I'll do this after. Is that okay?
Let me
I
just
was
fill it
actually-
out afterwards and give it to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, all of you. So unfortunately, I was at the last meeting.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Eileen Leslie. It's nice to see you all. So I was at the last meeting where I think the adopted ideas of non-moved into approval. So I haven't actually read 19.41, which was what I was going to grab right now. And I think from the last meeting, we're at a 12% cap, 2-night minimum, and those were really the big changes. Okay, the only thing that I would say about the whole situation, 2-night minimums, as an active Airbnb owner, that's fine. It's probably less taxing on some of the properties and the neighborhoods. You don't have so many people running in one day. It's almost like a smaller little commitment to you're staying, you're not coming for a big party. So I think the 2-night minimum has been working well. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't continue with that. 12%, I think because we're still halfway there, we're not there. It's probably a good place to stay. That isn't shocking to me. And maybe if we have to, we come back and address it as things in the economy changes with regard to housing and with regards to what the city's going to do with housing. I think we stay flexible there, but 12% seems reasonable. I was just going to bring up something that I personally would probably want to put on the agenda in the future. And that has to do with whether or not permits are transferable. So I'm just going to kind of put it out there. That's what I'll be looking to put on the agenda at some point. Because as you get closer to the 12%, and if they're not transferred automatically, then other people's properties can be devalued when it comes to sale if it's already bounced out. So I think that's a possible issue for the future. And as a property owner and someone that some of you know, I'm using my Airbnbs as my infrastructure to the restaurant and the new bar I'm building. I think that that's important, especially to someone like me, because the risk of my new businesses that I'm starting are really tempered by the success I'm having in Airbnb. So that's just a concern of mine, and I hope to bring that up in the future. Obviously, we're not near 12%, so I won't be, screaming and freaking out about that. But I think the transferability of the licenses is something that we should be thinking about, the permits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and just to clarify for people, The requirement for a 2-night stay has not changed.
Correct, right?
It is, to keep the permit valid, you must have rented it for at least 1 night during that 12-month period.
One stay, which equals 2 nights.
1 night.
Well, you can't just rent it for one night.
You can't rent it for one, right.
So we might want to change that to
That's
clarify.
very possible.
So you should write one stay, which equals 2
Just make it
nights.
2 days.
Right.
Well, the other issue is the fact that when the committee recommended 1 night, like going back to 1 night, was because there was no way for the city to know if you rented it for 1 or 2. An owner of a short-term vacation home rental, yes, I understand, they would like to rent it longer. Most of them require a 2-night minimum, but there was no way for the city to know if it was a 1 night or 2 night.
And I think,
So the thing about it is why have something in there that we can't enforce? But the decision was made, or the recommendation was made by the committee to take it out. The recommendation from the planning commission was to keep it in.
right. I think it's interesting because Yucca, I believe, is changing from the 1 night to the 2 night. So they're actually running behind us on having our rules in order. And I would just say, as some,
Probably no way for the town of Yucca Valley to know whether a place was rented for 1 night or 2 nights.
and you know what I would say to that? I would say at this point, there has to be some trust on hosts as well. Not necessarily that they actually want to make money, but that's a lot of turnover where you have cleaners going in all the time, jacuzzis. Oh my God, that's my new experience. If you have to drain them, you're like, it's impossible.
I agree, that's mostly self-imposed
Right.
by the owners of the short.
I think so, and it eliminates that whole party worry. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? You need to fill out one of these and turn it in. Or you can come up and speak now. Just make sure you turn it in before the meeting adjourns.
Hi, my name's Aaron Arismindy, and I'm talking about pretty much the Airbnbs. We need to have a cap on them because locals can't live here. We're running out of houses, and me and my family don't have a house to live in. We're getting kicked out of our house, and there's not going to be locals here to work at the fast food restaurants, the gas stations. They're all moving. They're all leaving. Most of them can't afford to live here, and they can't even find a house, first of all. And we need to think about the locals. And who's going to run the small businesses out here, not the city people coming in. We need to realize stuff and help out the locals. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Make sure you fill out the form, please. Is there anyone else? We'll close the public hearing.
Got some
I'm sorry.
letters to
Yes,
read
you have
into
some
the-
letters to read in.
So, the first letter is from Elliot Balsley. I bought a house and moved to 29 Palms about 1 year ago because I liked the quiet, small-town feel. I'm concerned by the rapid growth of STVHRs in this area, and I would like to see more restrictions around this. I'm happy to have some VHRs because tourism helps the economy. We've already seen some nice new restaurants and shops opening up, which is great, but let's slow down before it becomes a problem. I've tried to imagine what my street would look like if every 8th house, 12%, were an Airbnb, and I don't like it. I want to know my neighbors by name, make friends, and have a sense of community. I suggest capping the VHRs at 7% of total single-family homes. I also think it's essential to distinguish between different models of VHR. Model A, the homeowner lives here full-time as a primary resident and rents out a spare bedroom. Model B, the homeowner lives elsewhere and rents out the entire house. In Model A, there is less risk of noise complaints, wild parties, and maintenance issues, and the owner is still part of the community. This is the spirit intended by Airbnb when they were first getting started. This should be exempt from any caps put in place. Please revise the definition of VHR in Development Code Chapter 19.41.015D because currently it does not make any distinction between these models. Thanks, Elliot Balsley, 29 Palms resident. This letter is from Deborah Shea. Dear members of the 29 Palms Planning Commission and Development Directors, I support revisions to the recent STVHR ordinance. More specifically, I feel a cap of 12% is way too high. It is higher than any surrounding desert area. Caps are needed to rein in the problem of VHRs and what they are doing to our neighborhoods. There should also be limits on how many overall number of permit any single person or entity can own. These are not your average folks looking for a bit of income or the Marine who will relocate back to 29 Palms. These are businesses. These are commercial ventures. I don't think local zoning ever intended zoning in SFR residential neighborhoods to include hotels. As a permanent resident, I never expected when I bought my home in this once quiet neighborhood that my second job would be the burden to document offending activity of VHRs through photos, video, audio, and journals of the constant flow of strangers. The city hired a security guard to mitigate problems for long-term residents. Security guards are not law enforcement officers and have no enforcement abilities. The burden still falls on permanent residents to look after what's left of our neighborhoods. If we have to call the cops for enforcement, then I would say there is already damage and a change in character of that neighborhood. I don't feel sorry for 1 minute the argument of STVHR owners, but I took money out of my 401k to buy 2, 3, 4 more VHR homes in 29 Palms. I don't know about them, but I worked in this community in order to buy a home here and live here. The reality is these buyers are quite often corporations or other business entities that are buying up homes here and decimating our neighborhoods. The reality is these are not mom and pop companies earning a little extra to put their kid through college. For years, our mom and pop realtors have assisted locals and local Marines in buying residential properties. Yes, some Marines bought properties as rentals. I would bet a fair amount actually came back to live, work, and raise their kids in 29 Palms. Many Marines retire here to their forever homes. These mom and pop realty companies and their management companies held owners to accountability that is lacking when owners are corporations and absentee owners. The out-of-control growth of VHRs is very similar to the changes Uber unleashed on the taxi industry, or Amazon to retail. They have pushed out local businesses and local home ownership for the purpose of actually living and working in the community. So has Airbnb and the like changed the rental market. Where are the people actually going to live full-time to work in all these venues the city says are coming? Where is the workforce going to come from? Where will teachers live? Or will we need teachers because schools will close because there are no full-time residents? Where is the benefit to long-term residents of TOT? I recently got a quote to clean my home. The individual quoted me $1,500. I would have to tap into my 401k to pay that every week for sure. Good luck to her. And what part of TOT comes back to me for signage, security for my home, noise monitors, repair of my private road, etc. Or the time and cost the city would have me monitor VHRs. What part of TOT is actually invested in schools, infrastructure, or first responders or local businesses? It is the permanent residents whose taxes go towards these services. We all know VHRs can take costs off their taxes. Please wake up, City of 29 Palms. The problems VHRs is real if you are willing to look past the gains of easy money for the few. Give me permanent residents. The ones who plant flowers in their yards, who vote in local elections, or even care about local elections, who serve on committees of the Kiwanis or Rotary, and giving back to 29 Palms instead of taking. Mostly I want to be able to spend a quiet desert evening with friends and neighbors, not hidden behind private property signs and recording devices just to exist here. Sincerely, Deborah Shea. This third letter is from Chuck and Heidi Hurd. In the staff report, you state the following. Overall cap on the number of vacation home rental licenses. The revised ordinance places a cap on the overall number of licensed vacation home rentals within the city. The cap is established at 12% of detached single-family houses. Presently, the city has 5,833 houses, 2020 census. If the 36 houses on the Marine Corps base are removed, since they cannot be rented, that leaves 5,797 houses, of which 12% is 695 houses. This number of houses would be adjusted when new census data is available. As of March 29th, the city had 240 issued licenses, 129 pending licenses, and 50 closed licenses. Let's look at some simple math. According to the numbers above, there are currently 240 issued and 129 pending licenses for VHR, for a total of 369 homes that are off the market for families to either rent long-term or buy. This is already 6% of the available houses in the community. Taking an average of 2 adults and 2 children per house, that is 738 adults, 738 children that have no possibility of living in the 29 Moms community and becoming long-term residents. Now let's take a look at what 12% would look like. That would be a total of 695 displaced families, houses off the market for families to rent, buy, to become long-term residents of our community. Using the same average of 2 adults per kids per house, that is 1,390 less adults to live, work in our community, and 1,390 less kids in our schools and in our park and rec programs, etc. That is the closing of at least one or more of the schools in the city. That results in teachers and other school support staff having to find other places to work, teach, moving away from 29 Palms. That's 1,390 less people to support any other kind of business in the community. A 10% cap is a compromise and is still too high for the community. Many constituents would prefer 5 to 7%. Do the city leaders really not care about the citizens they have lost due to the housing crisis? We understand that not all of it is caused by VHRs, but that is the one thing that the city can control, and they are putting a blind eye to it and are only listening to the VHR owners, operators, etc. Wake up. Do the math. It's simple math. Permanent residences, community members, are worth more in terms of community involvement, volunteering, and being able to know your neighbor than all of the VHRs. Do what is right. Cap VHRs at 10% or lower. Take control of the city, and remember, it's the residents of the city that vote for the council members that appoint you, not all the absentee VHR owners and their transient guests. Save our city and neighborhoods. Chuck and Heidi Hurd. This letter is from Teeny Hood. Dear Planning Commission, I am writing as a resident of 29 Palms in support of the proposed revisions to the VHR regulations with a few notes. I believe the cap should be a 10% maximum, which is already extremely high, and would prefer a cap of 5 or 7%. I believe that there should be a cap on the number of VHRs owned by any one person or entity. I believe that there should be a 2-night minimum stay for a VHR. I believe these policies are widely supported in the wider community of 29 Palms, as I have spoken with many people across the city about this. It is true that few of these people attend City Council and Planning Commission meetings. For people who own VHRs, attending meetings and making comments is part of their jobs. But for local people, especially those who work in the service industry or have children or grandchildren who would be attending a meeting on top of their existing daily commitments and responsibilities, it is difficult. There is also a widely accepted perspective that the city government acts in its own self-interest and prioritizes anything that makes individuals and the city money over the beliefs and wishes of the citizens. A feeling of frustration that the opinions of the public are routinely disregarded for other concerns. This is an opportunity to show that this is not true, that the governing bodies of the city do respect the views of the people who live here, to acknowledge the majority of people in this city do not want their neighborhoods inundated with VHRs or their neighbors replaced with a rotating cast of tourists. I have heard many council people and commissioners talk about their own experiences with adjacent VHRs. While While I do not doubt these personal experiences, I respectfully point out that many of the council people and commissioners live in areas of the city which are zoned to have a lower density of housing than the average resident, with homes zoned for 1 acre to 2.5 acre lots. Their experience is much different than those of us zoned for 4 residences per acre. I would also humbly remind the commissioners that democracy should reflect the views and beliefs of the public, not the personal philosophies and experiences of the officials. Many months ago, Councilman Mintz professed that no one wanted 29 Palms to turn into Joshua Tree, but we have yet to see any action that supports that statement. I agree with Councilman Mintz and urge the city to take action, particularly to adopt an absolute maximum cap of 10%. The city charter lays out the goal of maintaining 29 Palms as a small desert community. I believe in that vision. Respectfully, Teeny Hood. This last letter is from Sharon Bishop. It's her handwriting. 29 Palms Planning Commission. My name is Sharon Bishop, and I wish to object to the 12% of 5,797 homes to be eligible for vacation rentals. That is 695 homes. Yucca Valley is at 10%. Housing is at a larger number, but they are being slow to move forward. Renters are being displaced and having difficulties obtaining a new home. There are problems at this time with the violations and aesthetics of these properties and the code being enforced. Your non-actions are causing renters and property owners distress. All you are concerned about is your 11% filling the 29 coffers, 10% city, 1.5, something planning. I would hope that the commission and council do not own themselves or family vacation rentals. Thank you, Sharon Bishop.
That's all the letters we
Sorry,
received,
that's it.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will now close the public hearing and bring it up here to the dais. Jim, I'll start with you.
Wow, where do I begin? Okay. I know a lot of discussion on short-term vacation home rentals, and there was a lot of angst from the community, and that's why we put together the ad hoc committee that looked at a lot of information. And a credit to my other planning commissioners, a lot of us did our due diligence, talked to our neighbors, read through the material, and tried to come up with what would be a good solution or a better vacation home rental ordinance. There's 2 things, even with this ordinance and even with the cap, there are several things that aren't going to happen. There was an issue of density, of clustering of homes. There was no way that we could equitably enforce that or do that, so that's still a possibility, especially in the areas, in the more desired areas of 29 Palms. Putting a cap and these other things are not going to immediately lower rents, and it's not going to put more houses on the market. A lot of people, or if the homes that are on the market, they're probably going to be the prices that are prevailing for rentals, for long-term rentals. I like all the things that we did, and I was one that was originally for okay, no, I want economic forces to do what economic forces do well, that supply and demand would eventually control the height of the market. But the consensus was that we put a cap. Now, when the committee met, the other thing that we said, if there's going to be a cap, if you're going to sit in there and say there's only so many short-term rentals which have an economic viability, it's something that has a value, then you also should limit how many permits or licenses can be given to one person or one entity. And that was the combination of the 2. You can't sit there and say, I am for a free market, and then put a cap on it and say, well, I'm for a free market, and anybody that wants to get a vacation license can get a vacation license. And I've heard the argument that, well, we don't do that for long-term rentals. And I say, we don't have a cap on long-term rentals in 29 Palms. We do have a cap on short-term vacation home rentals, or what we're proposing is a cap, because it is a special type of viability. That's why it has its own regulation. That's why we control it more. So if you're going to put a cap, and the committee recommended that if you're going to put a cap, then also put a limit on how many you can have. Because right now, if an entity wanted to, if they know that there's a cap, then, and the person that has the economic wherewithal can come in and say, I'm going to get as many licenses as I can because I know that there's a cap and that I won't have competition in the market. And I would like to be consistent and equitable that if we're going to have a cap, then we limit the number of licenses an individual or an entity can have. And that was the recommendation of a committee that spent 9 meetings, I don't know how many hours, going over data and saying, oh, if we do a cap, then we also should limit the number of licenses per entity or individual. And I think that would be a good thing. And that's the one thing I have a problem with this, is that we're sitting there saying on the one hand, oh, we're going to cap it. We're going to control and say the market can only be this big. And then on the other hand, we're trying to say, but we're going to be a free market person, and anybody who wants to get a license can get a license. And I just think that's not consistent. And for that reason, I just have a difficulty pushing this thing forward without those recommendations, because I know the committee worked hard. I know that they came up with those things. And it was, when we set a cap, we also said, yeah, we should also limit the number. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Max?
I was also on the committee, and yes, we spent a lot of time going over this. There's a lot of issues that I just don't think we can solve with this ordinance. We cannot make more houses be available for rent. I wish we could, because I'm not altogether happy with the house I rent. I go to pay my rent every first of the month, and I'm worried every time they're going to say, I'm sorry, this is the last month you can live here. Your owner is going to turn your house into a vacation home rental. It's a fear I have. I can't, even if we said, no, 4%, it's not going to stop that from happening. It's not going to make more houses available for rent. It might make a couple, but it's not going to make a lot more houses available for rent. Quickly, I guess. And to your, with the capping and then the limiting how many you can have, we have a cap on bars you can own in this town. I couldn't go buy a commercial building and say I want to open a bar two block over from the bowling alley, because there's already enough bars in that area. I would have to apply for a lottery and win the lottery for a ABC license. So we do still, we say we only have so many residents in an area, and this is how many licenses you can have. You have to win a lottery to get another. So we're doing the same thing with all kinds of other things. Not just this vacation home rentals isn't the only thing we say. This is the maximum amount in an area, and this is, you can only have this many. If you don't get in on the early stages of it, you can't get one. So we do the same thing with other things. And just with you, there are things in the development code that I'm not altogether happy with, but I think they're about as fair as we can make them currently with the staff we have, the information we have, and the ability we have to govern the ordinance. So yes, it could be better, I suppose, but I'm not sure how to make it any much better. That's all I have.
Thank you. First of all, Travis, if I remember correctly, we currently have 4 entities that own vacation home rentals that are not private people.
Yeah, that's correct. And I presented this data at the last meeting. It's a little bit dated, but not too far. Just find it here. Yeah, this was what we ended up with. We had 28 owners with multiple VHR licenses. We had 2 with 4, that was the highest, 3 with 3, and the rest are 2 with 2 VHRs. 9 have ADUs on the same parcel, so our code requires that if you license each separate single-family dwelling, each one has to have its own license. So that's kind of what's driving that up. 3 were owned by corporations.
So that's the breakdown of what we currently have.
But that was before we had a limit. That was before we had a pre, and that was when we had,
Right, but
you can have as many as you want. Now, all I'm saying is that if you do put Western Homes wants to come in and turn all those things on, he wants the ability to be able to turn each and every one of those long-term rentals into a vacation home rental. He stated that in his letter. And that's why he didn't.
30 some odd of them, right?
What I'm saying is like, if we're gonna do it one way, then we need to consider the recommendation that the committee came up with. It was a long time discussion. And they said, if you're gonna set a cap, then we also should limit the number that an entity can have, if we're gonna be equitable and fair to the people at large. And those are people that may have owned homes here for a long time, that may want to try. I mean, an owner should have the right to sit there and say, I can sell my home, I can make it a long-term rental, or I can make it a short-term rental. And it's not the same thing as liquor licenses, that's controlled by the state.
Right, but it's
This is a
still-
home,
it's
and that's
the
why we have
government- It's the government limiting the amount of economic
I got it.
opportunities you can have in an area.
Okay, I got it. But we're talking about an individual's home, okay? We're talking about personal property rights. And I'm trying to balance that with the desires of the community, I got it, okay? And so that's why we're looking at the cap, and that's why I'm saying, okay, I wanna be fair to the population at large, that everybody gets an opportunity for this item.
By limiting the amount one entity can own, it doesn't help anybody.
Limiting what?
Limiting the amount one entity can own by say, no, an entity, a person, a business, LLC, whatever, you can only own 2. That doesn't help anyone. It doesn't make
Yeah, it
more,
does.
doesn't make more houses available for rent.
No,
It
but what it
just-
does do is
It
like,
just makes more vacation home rentals,
we have,
renters. or
all I'm
owners.
saying is you have a cap now. You have
Right.
somebody that could come in and sit there and say, there's no limit on the number of vacation home licenses, and he can go out and get 6 or 7, because he knows there's a cap.
Right.
And Western home builders who said, I want the ability to turn all those homes into vacation home
He-
rentals. That takes it takes more long-term rentals off the market
He,
by one entity.
he built 38 brand new, I think
I
38
got
is the
it.
number, brand new homes. Or
Rentals.
right? He had built them with the intention to make those short-term rentals, vacation rentals.
Now,
was
he
never-
wanted the opportunity to make those
Right,
short-term rentals.
he was never gonna rent those for, when I looked into renting one of those, because I liked that area, it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath for $1,800
I know, it's not gonna lower the rent.
I couldn't afford to rent that, it didn't matter what I wanted, if it was a short-term rental or not.
All
Because
I'm
all I'm saying is, by limiting the amount one entity can own, it doesn't benefit anyone, it just brings more short-term vacation home owners into our community, and they're probably going to come from outside of 29 homes. Right now, we have the vast majority of our owners live in 29 Palms, correct? It's a
Not-
pretty good percentage.
Yeah, half.
Sounds to
Right.
me like you just made the argument for limiting the number per entity.
I did not. I am simply saying that if we say each entity can only own 2,
Or 3, or whatever it is.
now the people that own 3 vacation home rentals, 4 vacation home rentals, they're going to have to sell some of those homes, right? The chances that home's going to be
Or
bought,
turn one of them into a long-term rental,
or turn one, sure,
which puts more long-term rentals on the market.
but the chances are they're not going to do that because they've been making money off that third home.
I
So
got
they're
that.
going to sell the third home while the market is high, and
Okay.
they can make a good profit. And then that home is probably going to be purchased for either.
Gentlemen,
Got it.
first of all, it's my turn to speak. Second of all, it's a circular argument that neither one of you have convinced the other one.
Right.
Both your points are taken. It's my turn to speak. Couple of things I would like to address. One, I live in a zone of 4 houses per acre. You live in a, where it's 4 houses per acre. So the one comment was made is not completely accurate.
So does Jason.
Exactly. However, be that as it may, I take Commissioner Krushat's point. I don't see a big rush for entities to come out here to buy up vacation home rentals. A lot of the vacation home rentals were houses that were in poor condition. People put a lot of money into repairing and improving those homes and properties. And they're not going to put that kind of money into them and rent them for $1,200 a month. That's just not even realistic. I can also tell you, I had a friend of mine move back to town. They had to wait for their house to become available. They rented one of the little cabin places down on the golf course. It was $1,800 a month, and I've seen more space in a motorhome. So there are a lot of factors driving the cost of rents. I'm lucky I own my home because I don't think I could afford to rent in this town or anywhere else in Southern California. That's the unfortunate. Also, one of the reasons this is an argument for increasing minimum wage. It's really a shame that somebody who works full-time can't afford to rent even a basic place to live. But again, that's not primarily the fault of short-term vacation home rentals. I think the recommended changes are good. We can certainly make different arguments about the individual cap. I don't know whether that would actually do any good as far as controlling the number of properties. I understand Mr. Cruchat's point. Certainly someone could come in and say, well, I'm going to buy 50. Well, I hope they have that kind of money. Because I can tell you right now, I've been looking at home prices, and I'm routinely seeing properties that I know well in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. And that is absolutely, I have actually been offered over $1 million for my property. Sounds good. Problem is, what am I going to buy? Where am I going to live? Besides, my wife and mother-in-law would kill me. But that's just how crazy the market has become. In San Francisco, a person making $250,000 a year cannot afford to buy a condo or a single-family home. That's insane. But it's affecting us here too. I think this is an excellent revision. I was involved in writing the original ordinance, and a lot of cities copied our ordinance because they thought it was very well written. We tried to address the concerns of everyone involved. That's what the committee did when they reviewed everything, and it was a committee made up of private citizens, planning commissioners, and city council. And that's about as representative as you can get. So I'm happy with this. There's things that I would like to see changed, but I'm content with the way they're being recommended, so I can live with that. Having said that, is there a motion to either recommend going up to the city council or not?
No, I just would like to respond to the fact that, yeah, we all sat on the committee, and all I want to do is move forward what the committee said, because that was more of a consensus of the community than just the personal opinions of different council members, or planning commissioners. So,
Is there a motion?
I'm just trying to find the one section, but I make a motion, we recommend to send the recommendations to the city council with one minor change, with the one-night rental for the year being a two-night rental, because that adheres to the two-night minimum stay.
And finding it category exempt from CEQA.
And finding category exempt from CEQA.
Jim, you want a second? As I am not the formal chairman, I guess I can make a second.
We learned in our commission, even the commissioner can second.
I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion? And I will tell Mr. Cruchat that we can revisit the per individual cap at a later time if it becomes.
no, it's not the cap, it's the number of licenses per individual.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is what the committee recommended.
I understand it. I'm just saying it can be addressed without having to rewrite the whole thing, should that become an issue.
It's not rewriting the whole thing, it's
Well,
one thing.
Jim, I just said,
Got it.
it's not rewriting the whole thing.
Yeah.
I have a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cruciat?
No.
Commissioner Mendoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Walker?
Aye.
2-1 approved.
Just, if I may, actually, I was texting the city attorney just to kind of saw kind of what was kind of going on there. So a 2-1 vote, although majority, it's not.
Majority of the.
It's not. It had to be a 3-1 or a 3-0 to move forward, given the makeup we're having here. So it's gonna go to the city council with no action from the planning commission at a 2-1.
Okay. Well, thank you. Which unfortunately, circumstances dictate that our work is immaterial at this point.
I would say that.
Well, we have. But ultimately, we didn't get to recommend one way or the other because of the circumstances. Anyway, I would like to thank everybody who came out for this meeting, everyone who spoke, everyone who sent letters in, as well as the input we had during our study session and for the committee. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. Items to refer to city council, I think that just happened. Discussion and potential action items, does anybody have one? I do not. Matt, or Jim? I do not either. Community Development Director updates.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. A couple, but there's one thing I wanted to kind of circle back on the downtown plan. We had a inquiry from property owner, and they pointed out something that just needs clarification. We have in our plan a minimum FAR, that's floor area ratio of 0.3. That's how much building, percent of the building occupies the land. And then further down, we had lot building coverage at 50%. So obviously 30% is not the same as 50%. What was intended here with the lot building coverage was parking, it was outdoor dining, patios, and all of that. So we would just like to clean that up with a footnote going forward. Because the inquiry was a laundromat in downtown. So we're trying to make sure that everything moves forward appropriately. They would be coming in under the new downtown plan. And, following those downtown traditional specifications of the reduced setback, storefront on the street, that sort of thing. Some updates, housing element, our second round comments were due yesterday, so that's closed. The housing element does go back to the state for review. They have 60 days for their review, and then it would come back to us hopefully with no comments. And then it would come before you for adoption. Also last week, we submit our annual housing report to HCD. That's another prerequisite of granting approval to your housing element as you update your reports timely. Just to report, in 2021, we issued building permits for 18 houses. That's better than most years that we've had, when we've had 2 or 5 or so. Way below what the state has for our target, which is 131 units per year, but better. And just by way of reference, so far this year, 10 building permits have been issued. So we're already running at a faster pace. Now, this isn't going to solve the housing crisis, but we are seeing a lot more building within the city. Speaking of which, we continue to work on the affordable housing project here next to City Hall. We got word that the state will be issuing, they call it a super NOFA, coming in June. NOFA stands for Notice of Funding Availability. And so essentially what they're trying to do is package some of all these different sources and putting into one super NOFA, as they call it. And so we want to make sure that we're ready for that, to pursue those fundings. The key thing here is the adoption of the downtown plan, which rezones the property, which allows that project to move forward. Just some Updates on Project Phoenix. I keep saying we're done, but obviously finishing touches keep going on. This week we did finishing the striping for all the parking, and we're still installing some of the signs. You may have heard the term supply chain issues, so we're dealing with some of those, including sign poles that we're waiting for. A lot of people have asked about the street furniture. You know, why aren't there more benches and trash cans and bike racks? It's been ordered. Supply chain issues there. One thing we did get complete last week was the EV chargers. So they're now installed and 100% working. We have 3 fast chargers and 2 of the AC slower chargers that folks can use. And there's a little calculator that the dashboard gives you that says how much greenhouse gases you're saving. So far it's 4,254 kilograms. That equates to planting 109 trees that live for 10 years. So every time somebody plugs in. They're getting more and more popular as people find out that they exist. A lot of people realize this is really the last charge station between here and essentially the river. So they need to juice up before they head over. Some really good news, grocery outlet. Working on fulfilling their mitigation measures under CEQA, both the biological and tribal. I had wrote down, hopefully they'll pull permits here soon. I scratched that out because they pulled permits Monday. So, so we should see probably a fence going up within a week or so, and some construction underway. Dollar General, they're going through their second review at this point. New applications received. I mentioned the laundromat, also Taco Bell at Larea and Route 62 coming into town. And then continue to work on the infrastructure projects, just trying to get them over the 100% design, final approval, final permit. That includes the Channel Trail, swimming pool rehab, neighborhood safety project, bridge at El Rey, and a few other transportation projects. So they're getting close, not there yet, but hopefully soon. And we'll be able to bid them out and construction will start. So should see a lot of construction over the summer and into the fall. And that's my update.
Thank you. We have no study session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor, go home.
We lost your audience for the good stuff.
I know. They should put that up front. Maybe
I know. They should.
better mood, right?
Charles, do you mind, I couldn't quite hear, what's the story about the laundromat? What's proposed for that, or how is that? I kind of missed the connection.
It's a new building.